What is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio. And in this video, we are ready to attach our motors and wheels to our upper assembly here. So we will be just about ready at that point to shoot some of the notes or rings. All right, before we get started though, we gotta give our special thanks to First and Argosy Foundation for making this possible. Okay, for this step, we're gonna need 2 more of those sim motors. We use these in the drivetrain. We're gonna need our Andy Mark wheels. So these should be in the kit of parts. I think that these are 4-inch wheels, and they've got this like really sticky rubber coating on the outside, which is gonna do great at grabbing and launching the notes. We'll need 2 of those. We also need to pick up these hex to, well, 8mm to hex adapters. So these will fit on the sim motor, change the output shaft from this round shape with the keyway to this hex shape. And that hex shape, of course, is what is inside the wheel. So we're going to need that. Okay, and these bolts are 1032 by they're 625 long. So they're 5/8 of an inch long. And you can kind of look, you can kind of see we got these bolts from Andy Mark, but you can get bolts that have a little patch. They look a little dirty, like there's some stuff on them. And that is actually a nylon patch. And just like we were using the nylock nuts earlier to make sure stuff was locked down, here that nylon patch is going to do the same. That is going to make it harder to screw in, but that's also going to make it harder for it to unscrew accidentally. So getting the ones with the nylon patch is worth it. If you don't, that's okay. You're just going to have to spend some more time making sure to double check that everything is and stayed tight. All right, we also are going to need these are the retaining rings. We use them in the earlier step as well. So these are the same thing that we used when we were putting the transmissions together. We'll push that on. That'll hold everything from falling off our shaft. And then finally, we have keys. So just like before, we have the little keys that came in the kit that fit into our sim motors. These are actually extra. You're going to have to buy these extra. They're 2mm keys by 10mm long. That means the square sides, if you measure the short sides of the square, it's 2mm and the length is 10mm. And those will fit into that keyway on our sim motors when the time comes. All right, if everything goes well, you should just need a 5/32 Allen wrench, either handled or L, to tighten the bolts in. But we might need a pair of pliers to help get the keys seated, and we probably want a socket to help push those retaining rings in. So I think we used a 3/8 in the drive. Let's try a slightly bigger one this time. I got a 1/2-inch one, but I think anywhere between those 2 sizes is gonna work fine. And of course, we do need the frame, our structure here that we built in order to be able to have something to attach the motors to. Okay, I think we can just get started right away. If we check out this frame here, you can see we have these big circles on that sort of rounded plate that we had earlier. And the big hole in the middle is the hole where the sim motor is going to come through. That's going to fit the inside part of the sim motor. So all we're going to do now is find, if you remember, don't forget, there are 2 holes that are full in here. And then there are 2 holes that are open with the threading. So don't get fooled by the fake holes. Make sure you line up the 2 open holes here and here with the open holes on our mount. Now, doesn't really matter which holes you use. You can do it this way and do this hole and this hole, or you can rotate it and do the top and the bottom. Which way do I think? Yeah, I think it's fine, completely fine, either direction that you want to do this. So I'm going to line it up. I'm going to do the side holes, I think. So I'm going to just see if I can get this started by hand, which I should be able to, until we hit that nylon patch. And once again, I'm going to start both bolts before I tighten either one. And now we just go for it. You're just going to get them all the way tightened. Let me switch to the handled one. I think that should be faster here. Yeah, that's better. That is much more work than a bolt without the nylon patch. All right, let's get the second one done. And if it gets hard to turn, if it gets too hard to turn for whatever Allen wrenches you have, if you have to, right, you can put this in the long way. So the short side goes in and you have the long side to grab onto. And you can go ahead and, tighten it that little bit at a time where you get the extra leverage from it. So this way it works. It's easier. It's just going to take a little bit longer if you have to do it this way. So we'll finish this one up. And no matter what, once they're tight, I do like to put that short side in and give both of them one extra little tug just to make sure they're both tight all the way. Eventually, right, the wheel's going to be in here, so getting to those bolts to tighten them back up is not going to be super easy. So that's why make sure they're tight now and we don't have to mess with them too much in the future. All right, same thing for the other one. We'll line it up. I'm going to put the bolts kind of the same way that we did last time. Let's get both of them started here. And tighten again. Almost there. There we go. All right, my right hand is tired, so we'll do this one left-handed maybe. Maybe that was a bad idea. There we go. Last little bit. Okay, so I think they're tight. That's where I'm going to grab my L-shaped hex key here, and we're going to just drive that in for a little quarter turn, just to make sure we're nice and tight. Looks good. Okay. Next thing that you probably want to do is I'm going to rotate the output shafts so that the keyway is facing up. Up, maybe a little bit in, but we just want to have it so that we can put the key in and have it not fall out. Like working to push it up from the bottom is going to be much harder. So I've got the keyway now facing up here. Let's see if we can see that. Yeah, there we go. So in here, that keyway is facing up. And our next step is to take our little keys. And what we want to try to do is, again, get a corner of that in and then see if you can lay it down. And if you can squeeze that all the way down so it's nice and flat, then you're good to try to put one of these hex adapters on. So if you line up the keys, if it will push in, you're good. Make sure you don't have any key sticking out the end. As long as the key is completely within that hex adapter, then it's in a good spot. If it's sticking out, you got to try again and move it a little lower. Okay, next step is then to take the wheels. And I think it technically probably doesn't matter whether you put the wheel on facing this way or, my hex adapter came off, or this way. But I think I like it better this way with the flat part facing up. So go ahead and slide that all the way on. And you can see now when the motor turns, we'll be able to spin this wheel. Okay, but the wheel can obviously fall off still, and that is where we're going to use that retaining clip. So once again, on this retaining clip, remember there is the side where it's sort of curved and the teeth are pointing away. That's the side that's going to go down facing the shaft that we want to put it on. So it's sort of, if you think about it, it should slide on easier than it comes off, because when you try to put it off, the teeth will bite in. And if you can do this by hand, great. If not, get your little socket. And the 1/2-inch socket is kind of nice because it sort of fits inside. It rests in there a little bit better, maybe than the 3/8, but the same idea. We're just going to try to line that up on here. And okay, I dropped one. We're going to find that in a minute. And just use the socket to kind of wiggle it around, push and wiggle until it is on and flat. And now you'll see, like, I can't take the wheel off. If you have a little bit of play in the wheel, make sure it's pressed down as tight as you can. But if there's a little bit of play, that's not the end of the world. So mine can rattle just a tiny bit when that is pushed in about as far as I can push it in. All right, so this one looks good. Now we got to do our second one. This one's a little harder because the key is higher up here. So let's see if we can get that key in. I would recommend when you buy these keys, they're so cheap, get a couple extras because, you know, I'm going to drop it again probably. All right, that's good. This one, I don't think I put all the way down. So when I try to put this on, it like starts in the keyway, but it doesn't really go all the way. So if you have that problem, just get your pliers and just squeeze the key and the shaft together. And that will push it down the rest of the way. You could also try filing out the keyway if you need to. But now I think that's in all the way, and we should be able to. We hopefully should be able to. Yeah, there we go. Slide it on. Perfect. Okay, and same pattern now. We're going to grab our wheel. Slide the wheel on. Got the retaining ring and the socket, and just like before, we're going to kind of get that started and just wiggle it on. Okay, and once again, if you have a little bit of a rock, that's fine, but those two wheels are now on and connected. And we can take a look and we can really picture how this is going to work now. So if we take the ring, or the note, as it were, if we run the wheels this direction, it will actually suck it into the robot, and eventually it'll hit this bottom wall down here and be stuck. But what you want to check right now is when it's resting on that bottom wall, that horizontal piece we put in, it should still be touching this wheel. So if we loaded that in, if we went over to the human player and we loaded this in and it's locked in this position, now just by turning this wheel, I should be able to get it to go back out. Well, kind of turning both wheels, right? Should feed from one wheel to the other, and then the other wheel, spinning very fast, will launch it out. If, when this is all the way in like this, if you can get to a point where this wheel doesn't touch or doesn't have enough grip to make it leave, then you might have to make some modifications. You might have to double check and make sure that this is in the right spot and that this beam is in the right spot. If those both look right to you and it's not working, then you're going to have to try to take some more measurements and see what went wrong. But if you were in an emergency and you had a problem and you had to fix it, it is possible that if this were sticking too low, if you put another piece in here, right, you could take another piece of metal or something in there, that would make it so it can't go as low. So that might solve your problem. So just keep an eye on that. But it is also nice that it goes in far enough that it's not really pressing very hard on the wheel. So if there was something holding the top here, you can see I'm trying to go farther in with this wheel. And if I pretend like my arm is the top cover, it kind of spins in place. So that is also something that we want here. Because this way, when you human load the ring in, the note in, then if you run this wheel for too long, it's not doing any damage. If it were in a place where there was a lot of force and that wheel were really stuck, it's going to add more friction and maybe burn more of that wheel away. But here it kind of rolls nicely. So double check that those things look like they're in a good position. And if they are, then you are done with this video. All right, so we are done with this section, with this video. We've got our shooter wheels attached. We're going to come back in the next one, and remember my arm was kind of being that top cover. Well, we're going to actually build the piece that becomes the top cover. So join us for the next video, but before we go, we got to give that special thanks to First and Argosy Foundation for making this all possible.